There is a comma missing from a law in Maine. Nobody took it out by accident. A rulebook told a careful person to leave it out. And that missing comma decided whether 5 milk drivers got paid for working late. One of them is Kevin O'Connor. He drives a truck for a dairy. He loads food that goes off, and he takes it to the people who ordered it. His week does not stop at 40 hours. The dairy did not pay time and a half for the hours after that. It was not hiding anything. It was reading the law, and the law was missing a comma. This is Dollars Decoded. We take a number the world has quoted, and we find the person who actually paid it. Not the headline, the bill underneath it. Today, the number is the smallest one we have ever used. It is 1 mark of punctuation, and on its own, it is worth nothing at all. Nobody argues about the price of a comma. They argue about what it gets multiplied by. Let's decode it. Maine's lawmakers wrote the state's overtime law in 1965. The rule in it is simple. Work more than 40 hours in a week, and the extra hours are paid at half as much again. Then they listed the jobs that do not get that. Farm work, meat and fish, food that goes off. And here is the line the whole case turns on. The list ends with 5 words. Packing for shipment or distribution. Distribution just means moving it out, putting it on a truck and driving it somewhere. The drivers read those 5 words one way. Packing is the job. You can pack for shipment, or you can pack for moving out. Either way, the job is packing. Oakhurst read them the other way. Moving it out is a job of its own, and so it sits on the list. Kevin O'Connor does not pack anything. He moves it. So one reading pays him, the other one does not. A comma before that last word would have settled it in a second. There is no comma before that last word. The sentence sat there like that for 52 years. Nobody had a reason to read it hard because nobody was counting. He and 4 other drivers took it to court on the 5th of May, 2014. They asked to be paid time and a half for the hours past 40. A missing comma sounds like a small thing to sue a dairy over. Then you look at what overtime actually is. Overtime is not a lump sum. It is a rate. It is paid per hour over 40 in every single week. So take the smallest number Maine's own law allows. When Kevin O'Connor sued, the state's wage floor was $7.50 an hour. That is the bottom of Maine's own wage law. An hour past a full week is worth half as much again, $11.25. And when a court finds those wages were owed, it does not just hand them back. Maine's law adds the same amount on top, $22.50. For 1 hour of driving that had already happened, now put that hour back in, every week, for 6 years. That is how long Maine gives you to sue, for 5 men. And that is the floor, not the answer. These drivers were not on the wage floor. They earned more, so their hour is worth more. Nobody in that courtroom was arguing about punctuation. They were arguing about how many times that hour happened. So who took the comma out? Nobody did. It was never there, and that is the strange part. The people who write Maine's laws are handed a book before they start. They call it the Legislative Drafting Manual. On page 113, there is a short section about commas. It opens by calling them the most misused mark in legal writing. Then it gives an order. When you write a Maine law, do not put a comma before the last item in a list. That is not a style tip. That is the state telling its own lawyers what to do. So the person who wrote that sentence in 1965 was not being careless. They had a rule to follow. They were following the book. Every Maine law is written that way. The court checked, and here is the part that stays with you. The same page warns what can go wrong. Be careful, it says. If one item in the list is changed by the words around it. It gives an example about trailers and a weight limit. Then it asks which trailers the limit applies to. The page that removed the comma explains the danger of removing it. Nobody joined those two halves up for 52 years. The dairy's argument was not silly, and it very nearly won. Oakhurst went into court and said the obvious thing. Look at the list. It is about food and about how food gets handled. Of course, moving it is on there. Why would a state let a company pack milk without overtime, but not drive it? Oakhurst also had a guess about why the list exists at all. Food that waits goes bad. So the state let food work run late. The judges went looking for that reason in the record. Nobody had ever written it down. Oakhurst's lawyers pointed straight at the drafting book, and it backed them up. A magistrate judge agreed with the dairy. Then the district court agreed with the dairy. Kevin O'Connor lost. Then he appealed. 3 federal judges in Boston read the sentence again. They gave their decision on the 13th of March, 2017. Its first line is 9 words long. For want of a comma, we have this case. They found that the sentence could honestly be read both ways. And Maine has a rule for that. When a wage law is unclear, you read it in the worker's favor. So they took the driver's reading and they reversed. The lawmakers did not argue about it. They just fixed the sentence. They went back into the law and pulled the commas out of that list. All of them, replaced with semicolons. A semicolon is a harder wall than a comma. It cuts a list into separate pieces. Every item in that paragraph now breaks in exactly one place. The last item was changed too. It stopped being a thing and became a doing. The comma was section 15 of that act. One line inside a tidy-up of the state's labor rules. And the act that did all this has a name. An act to update the statutes governing the Bureau of Labor Standards to promote clarity. Clarity. That is what the comma rule was for in the first place. Here is the part worth keeping. Long after Maine and milk are forgotten. An unclear sentence never costs what the sentence costs. It costs whatever it is multiplied by. A comma in a birthday card is worth nothing. The same comma in a wage rule is worth an hour, times a week, times a crew, times 6 years. Your phone contract works the same way. So does your rent and the excess on your insurance and the small print on a loan. Nobody signs one enormous mistake. They sign a tiny one, over and over. So read the last item on any list you sign. That is where the gap is. Kevin O'Connor never wrote a word of that law. He loaded a truck and he drove it, and the sentence was already there. A small mistake is only as big as its multiplier. Kevin O'Connor won his appeal on a mark that was never there. Money always leaves a trail. Sometimes the trail is one mark on a page, or the space where one is not. Subscribe to Decoded, and we will keep reading the small print.